When I was starting out, I didn't know much. I didn't know what I wanted to do with my life. I didn't know what job I wanted to have. I didn't even know how I was going to pay the bills. But one thing I was sure of was that I was different than my brother and my sister. I had an elder brother and a younger sister, and looking at them, I knew I could never be like them. I knew I could never excel at math and science like my brother did. I knew I could never have the same kind of physical self-discipline that my sister had and used to become a ballet dancer. Instead, I knew that I had different strengths, different talents. And although I was confused about a whole lot of stuff, I was just sure that the world was going to wait for me until one day I would pop out of school and get to make my unique mark on the world. And I bet you feel that way. I mean, think back to when you were in school. You knew that in school there were certain subjects that you were drawn to, certain subjects that just grabbed your attention and wouldn't let it go, certain classes where time whipped by and before you even knew it, the bell had rung and, although you wouldn't have admitted it, you kind of wanted the class to happen all over again. And if you didn't like school, then maybe there were certain situations you were drawn to, or certain people you wanted to be around, or certain times when you just knew you were at your best. And you wouldn't call those strengths, not yet anyway, but even back then you knew you had something. You knew you had something special. And now you're holding out hope that your life, your work, your job is going to give you a chance to show everyone what that special thing is. And I've studied over the years thousands of successful people, and if you look at the world through their eyes, work can be a great place. It can be a place where you have a chance to be challenged in just the way that you like to be challenged. It can be a place where people recognize you for what you do well and then push you to get better at it. It can be a place where you get to make the kind of difference that only you can make. But I've learned something else. I've learned that only 2 out of 10 people actually get a chance to have a life like that. I've learned that only 2 out of 10 people get to play to their strengths at work most of the time. Now, the most successful people do, but only 2 out of 10 people get to experience that success. And the needle isn't moving. I do hundreds of these speeches every year to executives, and I tell them a message. I tell them how to figure out their strengths and put them to work, and they hear it, and they believe it, and they want to do it, but it's almost like they're too far down the road to do anything about it. They've got mortgages to pay, and they've got bills to think about, and they've got a growing family, and they've got a career, and they've got promotions, and it's almost like life has pushed them too far down the road now, and now they don't feel like they can make a choice. Well, you'll find that. You'll find that life gets really heavy really quickly, and the longer you wait, the heavier it gets, and if you're not really careful, you're going to wind up living some second-rate version of somebody else's life. You're going to wind up in a job where you're not engaged. A job where you're just marking time, where you're just putting in the hours until the weekend comes around. A job where you're not engaged and excited, but a job where you're bored, where you're drained, where you're burned out, where you're trapped. And when that happens, you can blame someone else. You can blame your teachers or your parents or your boss or fate. You can blame someone else, but the responsibility doesn't lie there. It lies with you. It lies with what you choose to do. So the question you got to get your head around right now, is how do you avoid that future? How do you avoid becoming one of the 8 out of 10 that don't play to their strengths? How do you get to build the kind of life where you are playing to your strengths in life most of the time? How do you build that life? How do you build that kind of success? What do you need to know? And what do you need to do before it's too late? Well, here are 3 myths that are going to hold you back. Now, other people are going to tell them that they're true, but they're not. You need to expose them for myths. You need to blow them up, figure out what's true, and then stencil it to your forehead. And don't let anyone ever tell you different. Here's the first myth. And everyone believes this one's true. The myth that as you grow older, your personality changes. It's not true. Here's what's true. As you grow older, you become more and more and more of who you already are. If you're really good at making friends now, you'll be even better at it in 20 years from now. If you're a neat freak now, then you're going to be a neater freak when you're 40. If you're an idea man now, you're going to be an idea man for the rest of your life. I have a son, Jackson. Jack's 6 years old, and already I know some stuff about Jack. I know this is a kid that craves structure. This is the kid that won't close the refrigerator door unless the ketchup's turned so the label's facing out. This is the kid where as I'm walking down a corridor in an airport pushing a cart, and I say to him, "Hey, Jack, jump on the cart, I'll push you around, it'll be great fun." This is the kid who very solemnly points to the little picture of the kid with the big red X through it, says, no way, it's against the rules. This is also a kid who's massively competitive. I don't mean in a way that all 6-year-olds prefer winning to losing. I mean in a way that when he is seized by it, he doesn't quite know what to do with himself. It's like a physical force. He's watching his favorite football team on TV and they start to lose, and he starts to squirm and twist in his chair, and after a while he just gets so angst up about it he has to jump up and bury his head in the cushions next door. Jack isn't going to grow out of it. He's going to have that same craving to win from 8 to 88. His dreams will change, his skills will change, his values will change, his beliefs will change, but the core of him, the strongest parts of his personality are going to remain the same. And so will yours. And that's okay. But of course what that means is that you need to get really good at describing what your strengths are. If your strengths don't change much during the course of your life, you need to become really specific at describing what they are. And most of us, frankly, are just terrible at that. You ask people in job interviews, what are your strengths? And people dance around and around that question and end up with vague, bland answers like, I'm good with people. I like making things happen. I'm a numbers guy. Well, no one's going to be impressed with that. If you're going to really push your time toward your strengths in life or in work, you've got to get much more specific than that. Now, you've been raised to believe that your strengths are what you're good at and your weaknesses are what you're bad at. But that's not true, is it really? Come on, think about it. You've got some stuff that you're good at that you hate. I mean, you're good at it, so people ask you to do it. In fact, they rely on you to do it, and maybe they've even pigeonholed you into doing it. But if you never had to do it again, it'd be too soon. What would you call that? I mean, I once had a friend who was a brilliant swimmer. At the age of 7, a lifeguard had seen him swimming in the sea, freestyle, told his parents had put him on a swim team, and all the way through school, he practiced and practiced. He did lap upon lap, swimming in the mornings, last thing at night, and he got on the swim team and he won meet after meet, broke record after record, and he hated it. In fact, he hated swim meets so much he'd get crushing migraines before every one. What do you call that? What do you call that when nature's blessed you with a ton of ability and given you no appetite at all? Where you're brilliant at something and it bores you to tears. What do you call that? Well, you call that a weakness. A weakness is any activity that leaves you weaker after you've done it. Doesn't matter how good you are at it. If it leaves you weaker after you've done it, it's a weakness. And of course, a strength is the opposite. A strength, your strengths, are those activities that leave you feeling strong. Those things that you do that make you feel strong. You need to pay incredibly close attention to how you feel before, during, and after an activity, because your feelings will give you a clue to what your strengths are. If before you do an activity, you actually find yourself looking forward to it, it's a strength. If while you're doing it, you find that you're in the zone, time flies by, you can totally concentrate, it's a strength. If after you're done with it, you feel fulfilled, it's a strength. Not fulfilled as in, thank goodness that's over, but fulfilled as in jazzed or jacked up. That's a strength. Now, to discover what your strengths are then, you don't need someone to tell you what they are. You don't need to take a test. You can find out what your strengths are in a regular week of life. Here's what you should do. Just try this. Take a pad around with you for a week, and anytime you find yourself actually looking forward to doing something, doesn't matter what it is, anytime you find yourself actually looking forward to doing something, scribble it down. Anytime when you're doing something, you find yourself just really in the zone, stop for a minute, scribble it down. Anytime when you're done with something, you feel jacked up and enthused, scribble it down. Don't wait until the end of the day. Don't wait until the end of the week and try and recreate it. You'll end up being way too vague. Do it in the moment. And don't write stuff down that other people are doing to you. Don't write down, I felt strong when my manager praised me. That's the manager doing it to you. Write down stuff you're doing. Don't judge it, just write it down. Verbs, stuff you're doing. I felt strong when I helped my mom understand that point I was trying to make. I felt strong when I cleaned up my room. I felt strong when I was retiling the bathroom. Doesn't really matter what it was. Just write it down. If you feel strong before, during, and after it, scribble it down. And then at the end of the week, what you'll find is you'll have a long list of activities. Well, scan that list and pick the 3 that really leap out at you. Those are your strengths. And then when people ask you about your strengths in job interviews or in the work situation or when you're trying to think about what you're going to do with your life, look at those 3 activities. Talk about those 3 activities. Use phrases like, I'm at my best when, or I feel strong when, and then describe exactly what you wrote down. Be specific. Be vivid. Now, other people are going to try and tell you that they know your strengths better than you do. Your parents, your teachers, your managers, but they don't. They may know how to judge your performance better than you, but you know better than anyone else what intrigues you and what doesn't, what you're really interested in and what bores you, what strengthens you and what weakens you. You know that better than anyone else, and those are your true strengths. So learn how to describe them, own them, because those strengths are going to be what drives your performance. Now, the second myth that people are going to try and drag you off course with, and gosh, everyone believes this one, is they'll tell you, look, if you want to grow, if you want to get ahead in life, if you want to get promoted, you can't rely on your strengths. In fact, you've got to figure out what you're not good at and really work at getting better at it. And this starts really early in school, doesn't it? You came back home with 2 A's, a C, and an F, and everyone, your parents, your teachers, they focused on the F, didn't they? You were really good at English and bad at maths, and you got remedial maths. And this continues at work. It will. You'll go to your first performance review, and it'll be 2 minutes on what you did well, and then they'll really drill down into what you need to work on. And what you'll need to work on are your weaknesses. If you're not careful, your whole career is going to be one long remedial math class. Now, the point here isn't that you can ignore your weaknesses at work. You can't do that any more than you can ignore the F in school. The point is that you shouldn't be working on your weaknesses. You're not going to grow most in the areas where you're weakest. You should be working on your strengths. That's one of the truths that's so important for you to remember. You're going to grow most, learn the most, develop the most, be challenged the most, bounce back fastest when you're working on your strengths. If you want to know a truth, know this one. Always be working on your strengths. If you want to succeed in life, you've got to deliberately push your time toward where you have some unfair advantage over everybody else. That means each week, you ought to have a strong, weak plan. Each week, you've got to have a strong, weak plan. That's not complicated. That just means that each week, you're going to have 2 things, just 2 things you're going to do each week to push your time toward your strengths and away from your weaknesses. Just 2 things you're going to do every week for the rest of your life. Think about the most successful people you know. Just for a minute, just think about the most effective people you know. Just get them in mind. Just visualize them. Don't they seem to spend an awful lot of time doing activities that really jazz them, that energize them? And you look at them and you go, you lucky devil. You lucky devil. How'd you find a job like that? How'd you find a life like that? How'd you find a job that fit you so perfectly? But of course, they didn't find it, did they? They built it. Each week, every week, they deliberately pushed their time toward those things that energized them and away from those that didn't. Each week, they pushed and pushed until gradually they tilted the floor and tilted the floor until the best of their job became most of their job. Well, you should do the same. Each week, volunteer your strengths to your team in some way. Each week, show your team how your strengths can help the team achieve its goals. Each week, deliberately learn some new skill, some new technique, some new trick that will help you put your strengths to work. And then slowly, gradually, each week, you'll rewrite your job description under your boss's nose, and he'll or she'll love you for it. Because then you'll win. Now, some people will tell you not to do that. They'll say, look, the team needs more from you than just playing to your strengths. You can't just play to your strengths, they'll say. The team needs you to put your strengths aside and do whatever it takes to help the team. There's no I in team, they'll tell you. They're wrong. That's actually the last myth that might be holding you back. The myth that the best teams have a bunch of well-rounded people all playing every role equally well. Well, they aren't like that, are they? You look at the best teams. You think about the best teams. They're not made up of a bunch of people all playing every role. They're made up of a bunch of people who have figured out what their strengths are, and then they've surrounded themselves with people who are strong where they're weak. So the team has become well-rounded precisely because each individual in it isn't. Well, if you want to become a great team player, you've got to do the same. You've got to partner with people who are strong where you're weak. The point of being a great team player is not to put up with all the stuff that weakens you. The point of being a great team player is to partner up with people who are different from you. What we, your teammates, what we need from you is we need to know, where are your shoulders broadest? Where can we rely on you the most? When the pressure's really on, where can we count on you the most? When the pressure's really on, what plays can you run? And you need to know the same from us so that we can partner up and get stronger together. Now, to be that kind of team player, the kind of person who knows their strengths, knows their weaknesses, and can stand up for both, that takes a lot of courage. That takes a lot of honesty. Warren Buffett, second richest man in the world, he knows a fair bit about that kind of honesty, that kind of courage. Recently, he did something really strange, didn't he? He gave away $31 billion to the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation. And he held a press conference to try and explain why he would do such a thing, where somebody said, hey, why'd you give all your money to somebody else's charity? And he gave two answers. One of them predictable, the other one just odd. The predictable one was this. He said, I gave it to the Gates Foundation because they can give it away better than I can. They are better than me, so I'll give it to them. They'll give the money away better than me. Typical, practical, Buffett-like answer. And if he'd have left it at that, we'd have chalked it up to just another example of Warren Buffett being smarter and wiser and humbler than the rest of us. But he didn't leave it at that. He couldn't. In the Buffett equivalent of Jack jumping up from the sofa, he couldn't help himself. He went on and he said, besides, charity's no fun for me. Who says that? I mean, some of us may occasionally think that, but who says charity's no fun for me? Imagine the kind of courage and self-assurance it takes to stand up in front of the world and go, you know what? That's not me. In work, that would be like you saying, you know what? I don't want to be a manager. I don't like being responsible for other people's work. When everyone's telling you that to get ahead, you should want that you should want that job, that you should want to be promoted, it takes a strong person to be able to stand up and go, you know what? That's just not me. Now, when Warren Buffett said that, he wasn't trying to hand off all the rotten jobs off to somebody else. He wasn't saying that charity is stupid work. He wasn't disrespecting the goals of charity. He was saying something much wiser, much smarter, wasn't he? He was saying, look, I so respect the goals of charity, they can't be entrusted to a guy like me. Well, if you're going to be a great team player, you've got to have that kind of courage. You've got to have that kind of honesty. You've got to be able to take a stand for your strengths and then fess up to your weaknesses. And then surround yourself with people who are strengthened by the very things that weaken you. Then, and only then, are you going to achieve the kind of success that you always knew you could achieve. Now, I'm not saying this is going to be easy. It's not going to be easy to stay on your strengths path. Not least because other people, well-meaning people like your manager or your parents or whoever, are going to try and drag you off it. You'll go back, you'll use your strengths, you'll be successful, and then people will offer you a bigger job, a better job, with more money, a nicer desk, a better view. And some of those jobs you should take, but some of them you shouldn't, because they don't allow you to play to your strengths. And if you're not really careful, you're going to wind up over-promoted in a job that you shouldn't have. Well, the only person who has to stay clear-headed enough to figure out which doors to march through and which doors to slam shut is you. And I'm not saying this journey is without risk either. The whole strengths journey that you should be on for your life, there's risk to that. There's risk that one day you're going to go back and go all out with all of your strengths and not win. Like my son Jack will take all of his competitiveness, just really go all out with it and not outperform a competitor. That's a bitter pill to swallow, that is. Or maybe there's a risk that you'll go back and you'll say to your manager, I'm weakened by confrontation. And she'll go, like I care. You're trying to just hand off all the rotten stuff off to some other person. So yeah, there's risk that you'll be misunderstood. But a writer, Anais Nin, had a great line on risk. She said this, she said, and the day came when the risk it took to remain all tight in the bud became greater than the risk it took to blossom. There's risks to blossoming. There's risks to betting your life, your career, your success, your satisfaction on your strengths. But you know that from this day forward, the risks of not doing so are far greater. Because here's what I know. One, I know you have strengths. Whatever you think about in terms of your strengths and weaknesses, there are certain activities that make you feel strong. You have strengths. Two, I know that no one's got quite the same configuration, quite the same pattern of strengths and weaknesses as you do. The least interesting thing about you is your race, your sex, your age, your nationality. All the really interesting, unique things about you are beneath the surface, and no one's got quite the same strengths and weaknesses as you. Third, I believe that you'll be your most creative, most effective, most productive, most resilient when you figure out how to play to your strengths most of the time. And last, I believe that everyone will win when you do. You'll win, your company will win, your friends will win, your family will win, the world will win, everyone will win when you do. That's what I believe. But it doesn't matter what I believe. In the end, it matters only what you believe. So let tomorrow be a different day than today was. Let tomorrow be a stronger day than today was. By which I simply mean let tomorrow begin with you looking in the mirror and saying to yourself, what are my strengths and how can I contribute them today? And then let every day after that start the same way. Because you've always known what your strengths are. You've always known what was inside of you. So trust them, be proud of them, and go out and make your mark. And how do you talk to your manager about your weaknesses? I mean, in most working places that I've been into, you're not supposed to have any weaknesses. By the time you get to any level of responsibility at all, you're supposed to be well nigh perfect. I mean, imagine walking into your manager's office and going, I don't have a strategic bone in my body. No, just strategy, surgically removed at birth for me. I can ask lots of what-if questions, I just don't have any answers. Or how about walking in and going, no, I'm just not a visionary. Can't see anything beyond around what's the next corner. Sorry, functionally blind beyond that area. I mean, who says that? Who says that? It sounds like you're like a First World War soldier going up to your captain and saying, I'm not really a go up over the trench kind of a soldier. I'm more of a stay at home, clean up the trench. You guys go up over the trench, I'll come back, it'll be spotless. I mean, come on. Who says that these days? And yet you've got to have the conversations. You've got to be able to talk to your manager about what weakens you. If for no other reason, then he or she's got to figure out how to cast you in the right roles. If you're going to manage around your weaknesses, you've got to talk to someone about it. You've got to talk to your manager about it. How do you do that? Well, here are two suggestions. First, don't say, this is a weakness of mine. Say, this is where my productivity is going to be lowest. In this area here, with this activity here, you're going to see less persistence from me, less creativity from me, less resilience from me. I'm not saying that to whinge, I'm just saying that to tell you. Second, have a couple of things that you think that you can do about it. If you're weakened by long meetings, say, and I figured out, here's a really nifty way to shorten this meeting up, what do you think? If you're weakened by doing the PowerPoint presentations and you're drained by it, have a solution or a suggestion as to who might come in and do that with you, or something, some action that can be taken, so that you don't come across as someone walking in and whining all over your manager as though he or she should jump to it and try and make your world perfect. Your manager's job isn't to make your world perfect. Your manager's job is to drive performance with you. But to do that, they will need to have you take the responsibility for coming in and saying, hey, in these activities over here, these are where I am least productive, least effective, least creative. So long as you can phrase it that way, and so long as you can come up with a couple of things you think you can do right now to mitigate it, that's going to be a much more productive conversation. Try it. There was a great Broadway musical a couple of years ago called I Love You, You're Perfect, Now Change, which is pretty funny on the Broadway stage, but it's often something that we feel about our colleagues or our employees or our spouse or our family members for that matter. I love you, you're perfect, now change. And it raises the question, how much of a person can you change after you've hired them? How much of a person can you change when you're working with them? Which parts of you are changeable over the course of your life, and which parts aren't? That's knowable. There's an answer to that question. The answer is that we can change your skills and your knowledge, but we can't change your talents. We can't change your enduring patterns of thought, feeling, or behavior. As an example, I can teach you the skill. A skill is a how-to. I can teach you the skill of how to present your product to a potential customer. Let's say you're a salesperson. I can teach you how to do that. I can teach you how to stock a shelf. I can teach you how to give an injection. I can teach you how to lay out a letter. I can teach you how to lay out a presentation. I can teach you all those how-to skills. The other thing we can change about you is your knowledge. I can change what you know about the competitive landscape out there. I can teach you what you know about the product that you're presenting or that you represent. I can teach you what you know from experience. So over time, your experience can change. I can teach you what you know about yourself. I can change your self-awareness. And I can change your values, which are part of knowledge. It's part of what you think to be important, what you know to be valuable in life. Clearly, over the course of your life, your values change. Your values at 15, what you think is totally important at 15 is not the same as what you think is totally important as 85. So I can change your values. Skills and knowledge, those can change. Your talents, your enduring patterns of thought, feeling, and behavior, those are enduring by very definition. So if you're competitive, if you're one of those people that instinctively compares what you're doing against somebody else, that loves pitting yourself against a peer on a level playing field and winning, you just get jazzed by that, I can't bleed that out of you. I can't berate that out of you. I can't make you ever believe that losing means nothing. I can't make you ever believe that it's not whether you win or lose, it's how you play the game. You'll never believe that if you're a competitor. If you're empathetic, if you're deeply empathetic and you feel the emotions of those around you, I can't change that in you. Flip that around. If you're not very empathetic at all, if you're one of those people who could be someone's best friend and never know it, then I can help you get a little better. I can teach you that empathy exists. I can teach you that other people have emotions that aren't yours. And I can teach you 2 or 3 skills that you might need to learn to be a better listener. I can teach you all that. But the only thing I'm going to do there is help you go from having no empathy to having some sort of karaoke version of empathy. I can help you get a little better. But in terms of those deep, recurring patterns of who you are, how empathetic you are, how focused you are, how competitive you are, how strong your need for achievement is, how driving your craving for significance is, how altruistic you are, I can't change those about you. Those are recognizable to you and your friends in the schoolyard, and they'll be recognizable by your grandkids when you're 85 years old. Those are the enduring parts of who you are. You need to trust them, own them, honor them, and then figure out a way to combine them with skills and knowledge, and so make a real impact in the world. People often ask, where do passions fit into strengths? How does passion fit into focusing on your strengths in life? Well, passions are the building blocks. Passions are the building blocks of your strengths. But passions by themselves are relatively meaningless. If you're going to take your passions and actually put them to use, you've got to combine them with something specific. In fact, I would say that a strength is a precise passion. Strengths are passions plus precision. Think about it. Some people have a passion for helping others. They're just naturally altruistic. But a passion like that, ooh, I just want to help the world, is as vaporless as skywriting. It looks good up there, but it just blows away in the wind. If you're going to take your passion for helping people and actually put it to work, there's got to be some specificity that you bring to the table. You could take your passion for helping others and turn it into the discipline and the specific activities of being an ER nurse and working in the frenzied triage environment of a trauma unit. Or you could take your passion for helping others and turn it into the much different set of activities involved in being a grief counselor in a hospice. The activities that fill a week of a grief counselor in a hospice couldn't be any more different than the activities that fill the week of a trauma nurse. And yet both of them are under the passion of helping others. So if you really want to take responsibility for your passions, yeah, listen to them. Yeah, write them up in the sky there. But then over the course of your life, it's your responsibility to bring them down to earth and put some specificity, some specific actions, some specific activities to those passions of yours. Early on in life, I discovered that I had a passion for asking questions. I had a passion even for interviewing. I mean, I took it from asking questions to, I have a passion from interviewing. I took it from 30,000 feet to 5,000 feet. But actually, even that wasn't specific enough, because I realized I didn't actually love interviewing. I loved interviewing people that are good at their job about why they're good. I love anybody who's great at their job, whether it's, whether it's a housekeeper or the president or the chief of staff of the army or a sergeant, doesn't really matter. So long as they're brilliant at their job, I love asking them why they're so good at what they do. I'm invigorated by that, passionate about that. But I'm not passionate about interviewing somebody who's good at their job about their political beliefs. I'm not passionate about interviewing someone who's bad at their job to help them get better. Sometimes I wish I were. Sometimes I wish I was passionate about helping someone who was struggling at their job to improve. But for no good reason that I can see, I'm not really. I'm only really passionate and invigorated by talking to people that excel, to explore why they excel. I've taken that 10,000-foot skywriting of asking questions and having a passion for that, and I've turned it into a specific set of activities that I can build my life around. If you want to live a strengths-based life, you've got to do the same with your passions. Take them out of the sky and bring them down to earth. I once worked with this guy that just bugged me. I didn't want him to bug me. I wanted to like him, but he just bugged me. Let's call him one-upmanship guy, because he was that guy who always had to have one thing better than you. If you had an idea, he'd have one better. If you had some client success, his success would be just that much bigger. He was the guy where if you said you'd climb Mount Everest, he said he'd climb to the moon. He was that guy, just always one thing better than you. And I wanted to like him, but I would look at him and I would go, I wouldn't say this out loud, but I would think to myself, you deplete me. You deplete me. Every time I think about going to a meeting with this guy, I would think I'd be walking in like this, and I'd find myself just almost physically not wanting to go into the room with him, not wanting to sit across the table with him. What do you do when the people you work with weaken you? Well, here are 4 strategies you might want to think of. First, stop being around them. I know, sometimes you can't avoid them, but you can probably do something to avoid being around them. And sometimes a legitimate strategy to use for a bad relationship is to get out of it. So can you, first of all, stop being in situations where you're in close proximity with that person? Second, can you team up with someone that softens his rough edges? with this chap, with one-upmanship chap, there was a third person who we often used to work around who was really inquisitive. And whenever one-upmanship guy would say, hey, I've just done X, Y, or Z, rather than having my reaction, which was to get get my back up and my bristles up, this person would go, ooh, tell me about that. Ooh, tell me more about that. They were just naturally intrigued by what this person had just said. And actually, by hearing one-upmanship guy describe his new brilliant idea, I became kind of intrigued by one-upmanship guy's brilliant idea. This third person somehow made one-upmanship guy feel a little less annoying. Actually, he began to look rather smart to me. Sometimes that works, doesn't it? You bring a third person in, it changes the dynamic. Third, try this. Offer up one of your strengths and see whether or not you can drag him into a place where he ceases to bug you quite as much as he did before. With one-upmanship guy, I'm a guy who's conceptual. I love ideas. So after a while, I would just keep bringing him more ideas and seeing where he would take them. I almost took it as a little competition with myself to keep seeing, in every meeting I was with him, could he really one-up every new idea, every new initiative, every new thought, every new action I could bring to the meeting. So in a weird way, he was motivating to me to keep offering up my idea strength, my innovation strength, my conceptual strength, and just see what he did with it. And frankly, sometimes he had some pretty darn good ways to take an idea of mine and take it up to a new level. Finally, try shifting your perspective on this person that weakens you. Can you begin to look at them through the lens of their strengths? Every single one of us probably rubs somebody the wrong way. And you could choose to look at somebody through what they don't bring. You could choose to look at somebody through who they aren't. You could choose to characterize anybody in the world by what they don't bring. Well, perhaps the problem wasn't one-upmanship guy's problem. Perhaps it was my problem. Perhaps I was looking at him as someone who was trying to compete with me, and all he was doing was trying to bring new ideas to the table. Perhaps I shouldn't have looked at that as a direct conflict or competition with me. Perhaps really I should have looked at that behavior as him never being satisfied. Maybe he was the kind of guy who always was looking for some better way, some new configuration, something as yet unthought of. And therefore maybe he was an awesome catalyst for me and the rest of the team. I did try that with him, and frankly it worked like a charm for many years. What began as my problem, he weakened me, I changed my perception, and suddenly I saw him in a totally different light. I'm not saying that will work with you every time. To go back to the original S, sometimes you do have to stop being around people. But there are other strategies you can try before you just opt out of the relationship and blame the other person. It's hard to talk about your strengths with your manager, isn't it? Because half the time it sounds like you're boasting. It sounds like you're walking in and bragging that, hey, I'm good at activating projects with clients, or hey, I'm good at analyzing data. Most of us don't really want to seem that kind of self-involved, self-aggrandizing kind of person, so we don't often talk to our manager about our strengths. We talk about our areas of improvement. But you should be talking to your manager about your strengths. You should be volunteering your strengths. And so you need to find a simple way to do that that doesn't make you look like a braggart. Here's the best way to do it. Frame it as, here's a couple of things that I can do, a couple of tangible things that I can do to help us reach our objective. Tie your strength, what strengthens you, to the activity and then to the goal that you all have as a team. The more clearly you can make that link, that what you're saying is, how can I make a bigger contribution to driving this goal? That's what the manager wants to hear. The manager wants to hear that you've got more to offer, that you've got more to bring. The manager wants to hear, where are your shoulders going to be broadest? Where will you be most resilient? Well, you have the answer to that. The manager doesn't. You have the specific answer to that. So if you can frame it as, here are some specific things that I can do to drive this goal, that manager of yours is going to be much more ready to accept it and much more ready to take action on it.